Well, I don't get frightened easily, I startle. So please don't ever stand behind a corner, because I will jump and scream. But I think the creepiest investigation I had was actually at Waverly Hills, that death tunnel. I don't like the death tunnel. I just don't. And my knees start shaking, and I'm like, I am staying close to this door, I don't care. And I think it's just because it's more of a gut feeling. Now, we did catch EVPs, and they weren't very nice, and you did hear footsteps coming up towards you and stuff like that, but it was more just a creepy feeling. Just like a, you know, like you were expecting something to be there. So that was just more of the scariest thing. I've never felt endangered, I've never felt anything like that, but it was just an icky feeling that I had, and I still to this day, I'll go in there, but I'm towards the top. I did my one time going down, came back out of breath, but I did it. But I'm like, no, never again. I'll stay towards the top.
I don't know if I have like one that like is like the scariest one, but you know, there's like a couple that are right there. And so one of them is this house in Burlington, New Jersey, and it was a darker case. We believe it to be demonic, and it came from another investigative team. And the guy. He's not a guy you would want to spend time with alone to begin with, you know what I mean? So to be working in his house with him alone was an experience in itself. Add the fact that he's like, you know, being possessed by demons like every day. That was kind of scary. So when we were there, we had a lot of pretty jarring experiences. Something that wasn't caught on camera was Michelle Belanger. She had walked into the house, and multiple witnesses saw her coat, like, on the back of her get lifted up. And, you know, that's not like, so, like, it's not hurtful, but it's just when you experience something like that, it's pretty out there. There was one point where we were wrapping up the case, and unknown to me at the time, Ryan was upstairs doing religious provocation. And I had gone upstairs to use the ladies' room. And I walked into the room, and I just felt just like something was off. So I stood there for a while to see if anything would happen. And, you know, nothing was happening. So I opened the bathroom door, and as I'm closing it, I hear this crash against the door. And it's this huge antique metal boat propeller that came flying off the wall towards my head. And we have it on camera, which was pretty amazing to us because you never get shit on camera. But you know, what's interesting about it is because, you know, we tried to figure this out 1,000 different ways. How could this have happened? How did I make this happen? Was it the vibrations in the floor? Was it the door? The thing though that's interesting is that the door is a very old door, so it's swollen, so you can't shut it. You know, you have to kind of like slowly ease it in. The other thing that's interesting is that the boat propeller, there wasn't anything under it. So let's just say the nail had given out. Whatever was, you know, holding it gave out. Would have gone straight down. This thing fucking went left, like right towards my head and down. So, you know, I think when you're having like physical objects made out of sharp metal, you know, come towards your face, it kind of throws you off a little bit.
Oh, God. There's been plenty of places, same thing, startled, not scared. Usually stuff will happen, it's strange, and it's kind of a weird process because something will happen, you'll be like, oh, okay. And then you go through all the possibilities of what the heck this thing could be. And by the time you've gone through most or all of them, it's been an hour or so, you've been in that room, you're not dead, so how scary can it be? We're like, okay, I'm not hurt. But I'd say scariest is that, you know, you go into these places and you're running into raccoons and bats. Barry and I and the crew got chased around by a wild boar in France. That was fun. I had a gun pulled on me in Germany during a reveal. That was amazing. So it's usually people and animals that will scare the living Jesus out of me on a case. Everything else I can take. You want to swing doors open and throw something, fine, but just please, no humans and animals.
Yeah, the scariest thing is usually the places Josh Gates takes us. or the things that he has us do. The scariest place that I've ever been was, in the investigation I was on, was in the suicide woods in Japan. It's at the base of Mount Fuji, and this woods is incredibly dense. It's a volcanic ground, and it's actually not hard dirt. It's this thick moss that goes up to your knees, so you're just kind of sinking and walking. And they find, the number's going to be off now, but they used to find about, 5 to 6 bodies there a month. And that would be people going there to commit suicide. And so it just had this real negative connotation, and so we went there because of that. And you go in and you see all these signs that say, turn back, your life is important. And it's just these horrible signs. And then you get in and you see signs of life, and you see where people had camped before they had, committed these acts. And as you're walking through, it got darker and darker, and then there's nothing, it's pitch black. You can't see your hand before your face, it's that dark. And when we split up, I got cold, but that was fine. We were in Japan, and it was, cold time of the year. And then I got really dark, and I say dark in a real negative kind of way, in a way that kind of comes over you, like a sadness comes over you, that rolling kind of darkness that you like fall into a depression, and you just want to sit on your couch and like eat ice cream and watch sad movies. It was like that, and then it just got worse. And I got kind of turned around, and I was trying to talk to people, and I couldn't get anyone on the walkie. And it was probably the most alone I've ever felt. And so I was feeling these real negative thoughts, and I was feeling really alone, and I was like, wow, this is why these people come here. But then it just takes over. It's just, and who knows if it's psychological, because I was in those mindset and I was in a dark place, and that's where it took me, or if there was some energy there that was making it happen. But when we finally left, and we captured some really strange things there, from EVPs to, we had this disembodied shadow that actually seemed to melt into the earth that we caught on a camera. But when I went home, I took it all with me. And it took a real long time for me to kind of be myself again. So it stuck with me a lot longer than any other investigation I've been on. So that felt to me like the most fear I've ever felt, because that's how I would describe it. It was just a lot of fear, and it was overwhelming. So your next vacation, perhaps, maybe the suicide woods in Japan with the kids. Think about it.
Yeah, just don't buy a one-way ticket.
Please.
What was the coolest place you guys went?
Think about this one.
The coolest place I went was Antarctica. We flew into Argentina, and you go to a place called Ushuaia, which is the end of the world, and it's the last landmass before you go to Antarctica. And we got on this tiny, tiny little boat. There was one sea captain, one cook, and one deckhand, and then the mess of us. There were 6 of us, Josh, myself, Gabe, Sean the medic, our tech, and Kyle, the other camera. And they strap you into these beds, and you're there for 4 days in the worst chop of your life. It's awful seas. There's no shore break. There's no way for these waves to break on anything but your boat. So you're just thinking the entire time, you're like, well, I'm going to die here. This was an awesome trip. Thank you again, Josh, for bringing me on these amazing adventures. And then one day the captain calls up, and you go up, and then you just see another world. I can only describe it as the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Blue waters, just white glaciers, just so gorgeous, just out of the water. And animals unlike anything I see. These lion seals that are just so fierce, and little penguins that, like, in the movies came up to you, and they were like super interested because they hadn't seen a person before, and you're like, I want to pet you. But there's 3 rules in Antarctica. You can't pet any of the animals, because there's no government. You can't pet any animals. You can't pee or poo on the island. And you can't leave any garbage behind. We broke almost all those, except we didn't pet any of them. So you can imagine how many times the boys broke 1 and 2, or number 2. But it was somewhere I never thought I would be. in my entire life, and probably the one chance I'll ever have to see another world. It's absolutely gorgeous. If you have a chance, go. Just know that you should take a really big boat.
Oh God, this is going to involve another number 1 and 2 story.
Girls can be gross too.
All right, so I mean, you've experienced a lot of international travel and the craziness that comes along with that. I'd say the craziest location that I went to for this, and the coolest, was the ATM caves in Belize. And it was funny because they're like, oh, it's gonna be fun, we're gonna make it look like you're camping, but you're not. So you're gonna hike in and out 90 minutes every day. And it was just like, this is awful. But the place is really cool, it really was. So we get there, they strap all of our equipment to donkeys. And you don't see that part, of course. And they're bringing the donkeys through the woods. We had to cross 3 rivers. We had these gaiters on so that we didn't get bit by the 1, 2, 3 snake, which is, they explained 1, they bite you, 2, I forget, and 3, you're dead. So 2 really didn't matter, you just wanted to avoid number 3. So we got to the cave, and it was funny because there was kind of this picnic area, and we set up tents, pretending we're gonna camp, which we weren't gonna do. And then there was this shack of an outhouse, which you really didn't want to go in. And they bring us down to the cave. Now the cave was awesome. The problem with it is before we go in there, they tell us it's going to take you guys 3 hours to get from here to the very back. And then you're going to have to go the 3 hours out. I'm like, okay, fair enough. And now I'm thinking, I don't know about you girls, but most girls don't have a large bladder. So I'm like, how is this going to work? Like, this is kind of scary. So of course one of the guys asked, and production pulls out Ziplocs for like, number 2?
Are you serious?
Dead serious. Oh. And they're like, if you go, you're carrying it yourself. And I'm like, first of all, I wouldn't want to go. Second of all, why would I hand it over to somebody else?
Right.
Like, it's
full
disgusting. Yeah. Hey, do me a favor. It's like, is that how you figure out who your true friends are? Like,
Grant, I will owe you one.
So we're already like, this is wrong. Everybody's like, I'm not eating tonight. I'm just not going to eat. So we're like, well, what about number 2? And they're like, well, you could go in the water, but I wouldn't suggest it because there's willy fish. And we're like, no, willy fish. They're like, well, you pee and they kind of swim up and you get infected. And of course, everybody's just like, oh my God. So we're all trying to think of ways of going to the bathroom where we're not going to get attacked by willy fish and we didn't have to use Ziplocs. So it was all sorts of wrong. But when you got in there, it was cool because in some places, the opening, you had to swim in, which is scary because I was like, what is in the water? What's gonna eat me? And then you would get onto like flat, like ledge type rocks, and 1 minute the water's ankle deep, and the next minute you can't touch the bottom, and you're, you know, climbing up rocks, the sides in the cave, and we got to this back portion that had all this really, really old, I believe it was Mayan pottery, and it was cemented basically into the ground, and some of it was whole pieces of pottery, some of it was the shattered pieces. They're all stuck to the ground. We had to take our shoes off. I think we were allowed to use our socks, but they were afraid of us breaking some of this pottery. Not so much afraid of us cutting ourselves in the pottery, but it was crazy because when you went to the very back, we had to climb up this back wall, and then once you got to the top, there was like this little cave area. And there was a full female skeleton, same deal, half cemented into the ground. And the story goes, she was, you know, a sacrificial kind of victim, and she was left up there. So it's just kind of wild.
Because someone handed her a bag of poo.
Yeah. She was the queen of the Ziplocs. The whole experience was really neat, but it was funny. I will just throw this in real quick. By the time we did this 3 nights in a row, the hike in, the hike out, you know, going through the back of the cave and back out, everybody was exhausted and delirious. So I remember the last night, we're all walking in line one by one, and somebody in front started singing Hi-Ho. And it was just, we're all tired, we're all exhausted, and here I am, all happy singing Hi-Ho, and all of a sudden, I got my flash like this, something goes whoop, and all 8 legs lit up. I was like, ah! Everybody thought I found that, you know, 1, 2, 3 snake. So yeah, amazing place, but a lot of these amazing places come with a lot of crazy situations that you have to deal with to get there. So it was fun though. It was neat.
My coolest place, I gotta give that to Centralia, Pennsylvania. It's a little tiny coal mining town that is completely deserted except for 4 families. In the 1960s, there was a brush fire that wasn't put out properly, so literally the entire town is on fire, and has been for the last, what is that, almost 50 years. So we went there, and it's this, it's very surreal because it kind of, I mean, it kicks you in the butt as far as how insignificant we are. Because, I mean, this town was around for, you know, hundreds of years, and now it's literally deserted, and the only way you would know that it was there is because the only parts of the town that aren't affected by this fire, and I mean there is smoke coming out of the property, are the 4 cemeteries, are completely untouched. Which is pretty bizarre when you start thinking about it and knowing that the entire fire is under the entire town. So I think, you know, aesthetically and paranormally speaking, that was probably the coolest place I've been.
I would say for me, it would be, I did an investigation in England in the Cotswolds area, and we were investigating, I think it's called Winchester Manor. And the area, witches were persecuted. They were hung from the trees, and so there was a lot of witchcraft that was practiced and stuff, and so we had to do some of the rituals. And one of them is snakes, and I am terrified. I will pee my pants. I don't have a poo story, but I have a pee story. But no, just kidding, other than I got locked in the bathroom, but the porta potty, which has happened more than once, unfortunately. But it was snakes. And I remember we were beginning the ceremony, and I saw this burlap sack bag, and I'm like, why is it moving? Okay, what's going on? What is that popping out? And like, you have to do this in order to investigate the manor. You have to participate in this. And I was like, hell no. And like, you have to. And I'm like, you already put the sticky stuff on my head. You already, you know, I walked miles through this forest. I am not touching the snake. I ended up touching the snake. But the whole entire investigation, because of it was so cold, the heat from my battery pack on my back for the light thing, it kept crawling over me and wrapping itself around because I wasn't holding it tight enough, and I was afraid if I pulled it, I would snap it. I don't know, because, you know, I've never dealt with snakes before. So that was this, actually that's probably my scariest investigation I've ever done. Now that I think about it, I dealt with snakes. Ugh. But anyway, so, but it was a gorgeous place. We had some crazy stuff happen, but the area was beautiful. I loved it, but yeah, the snake part, not so much, or the bathroom part. So.
We'll eventually hand out some Ziploc bags. I know it's been a little while. You guys might need to go.
TV is so glamorous.
I think we should do more like Tupperware, like colored Tupperware, so then we don't even really see it. You just kind of let it burp, or whatever you do. You know when they say it's like snap, maybe it like burps or whatever. That's what we should do. None of the Ziploc bag stuff.
Everybody can have a different color.
Exactly.
Color-coded temperature. Exactly. This is a girl's pair.
Yeah. Okay. Red means danger.
Oh, yeah. Give those to the guy.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have, pardon, do any of you have like, I'm drawing a blank on the word, but like tradition or a ritual you do after a case or whatnot to center yourself, relax, just put anything negative out of your mind and just feel good.
Yeah, I drink some booze and I say, there's only a few more days. He hasn't killed you yet. You can do this. You can do this. He hasn't killed you yet. I think we all have kind of a ritual where we all go back to base camp and we all just debrief and you just get everything off your chest because, you know, there's some really hairy moments that happen. You know, there's some really scary things, and you don't want to take that with you, you know, as we go. We just keep traveling. So we kind of have like this big debriefing, and we kind of do like a big group hug. Sometimes we don't all hug because we're mad at somebody. We sing Kumbaya. No, but it's like it's this real moment where we're all kind of just sitting there thinking, we did this, we were in this amazing place, like we were in Tikal, or we were in Petra, and just a moment to reflect on where we were, how things, went, and that everyone's safe and good, and we're kind of good to go. And you also count and make sure that we have everybody. Where's Gabe? We shouldn't leave without him.
I don't have any rituals, no. I'm still kind of in the middle as far as what I believe and what I don't. So I've just kind of been like, we're fine. And I go home. And it's funny because anytime anything weird happens in the house, my parents are like, hey, where's Kris? She brought something home. I'm like, no, I didn't. But one of the things that Grant would always say to me, because he did grow up in the church. Some of us did, some of us didn't. And his thing was, he didn't like bringing a cross or having a certain necklace or something he said before he went in or something he said before he went out. Because he said that if you put so much faith or weight into an object or a prayer or whatever it is, some people will then go into the investigation and, oh my God, I forgot that cross, or oh my God, I forgot this, that, or the other thing. And he says you almost kind of weaken yourself in a way, or you kind of open yourself up in a way. So that kind of made sense to me. But yeah, I've just never felt the need for something, or the worry, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really have any particular rituals. I do notice when I get really scared, West Virginia State Penitentiary scared me. And, I took 8 blessed medals and I had them in every pocket. I had one in my sock, and and I'm not really Christian, but it's yeah, give me blessed medals. But normally I don't do anything. I can tell you from, doing the demonic cases we have done, because that stuff will follow you. And I don't just mean, you'll have, shadow demons in your house, but I mean the psychological effects from seeing that kind of stuff and working with families that go through that can follow you. So the best advice I can give is just surround yourself. It sounds kind of, hokey, but I mean surround yourself with happy people and do things that make you happy, because it just clears all that negative stuff.
I just basically ask my grandparents to watch over me, and then when I leave, I say, please do not follow me back. So that's all. I don't do prayers. I don't do, and I'll actually, you know what? Actually, the day after investigation, I'll journal. I'll write about the experiences I had. I mean, I try and make sense of it. I try and debunk it and stuff, because it's after you've had time to let it sink in, and that energy that you have is kind of now calm. I'll sit there and look over it and stuff like that, because I try and write notes when I investigate, just to kind of, because there's so many things that could happen, and you forget because there's so many things that are going on. So I try and write notes and stuff, and then the next day I kind of look over and I'm like, okay, well this happened because of this, or that, oh yeah, that's right, that happened, things like that. But I don't really do prayers, but it's just a little habit of Grandma and Grandpa watch over me, and no one come home and hang out in my backseat of my car and scare me, please.
I do like to apologize when I walk through cemeteries. Just be polite. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Excuse me. I didn't mean that. Excuse me.
This question is for Erin. What's the scariest vehicle that Josh ever put you in? And also, could you add to that? I know he likes to bring you through in cultural immersion. What's the craziest outfit he put you in?
Well, the real thing is that I put Josh in those cars, so it's actually my doing. So when you do a show like this and you're a producer on it, like myself and Josh are, you're basically handed a budget, and they give you line items. So you have budget for transportation and budget for luggage and travel and all these expenses. So there's a certain amount you can spend in certain areas. So I do the logistics, so I'm the one working with our advanced producers. The advanced producers go ahead of us They make sure that the interviews are there in the places that we want to go, and they basically kind of get things started for us so that when we fly in, we've got boots on the ground and they're working with our fixer and we already have a translator and all that good stuff. So I give them very little money for our transportation because we need lots of transportation. So we don't only include in that light item the car we're in, but it's the car that, you know, any other crew is in or security's in, or a car that, or our ATVs or our kayaks, all that counts. So there's sometimes, you know, our advanced producers go into Vietnam and they're in the middle of nowhere and they have, you know, $50 to borrow a car from somebody for the week, and hence a vehicle that lights on fire when Josh puts a key in it. So, the scariest was probably when we were in Africa and the car lit on fire. That was really scary. But we've been in so many. So you get in it and you're driving and you're going up, you know, a hill on a highway and it just stops and the brakes don't work and you're rolling backwards on the highway. In Namibia, we were driving, and we didn't actually show it on camera because it was the scariest accident I've ever been in my life, but we had a tire come off the car. And so there we are, skidding on 3 wheels in the middle of, you know, the African desert. I'm just thinking, my God, I'm faster than an ostrich right now. This is the one time in my life I can beat one. But yeah, it's my fault. So it's really, you know, Josh still to this day blames me for so many investigations that we maybe had less time in because we had to get other transportation to get there. But mostly it's Sci-Fi's fault. If we had a bigger budget, we would have awesome cars. But in the middle of, you know, Cambodia, you can't get an Avis or an Enterprise, and you're not going to get an Escalade. I'm sorry, he's just kind of picky sometimes too. And then in terms of the cultural, I've worn everything from burqas to crazy, you know, medallion-studded things from Thailand. I mean, he's made me wear everything. He's made me eat everything. I've eaten snake, I've eaten shark, balut, anything. The cultural immersion thing is only amazing if you want to do it. When it's forced on you, then it's just cultural forcing. So when you've had a bug shoved in your mouth, that's not cultural immersion. But I'm better for it. I'm still alive, and I have these amazing stories to tell. Thank you. So many shy people today.
This one's for Erin too. I know you've gone on expeditions after a lot of different cryptoids, and I was just wondering if there's one in particular for which you found the most convincing evidence of its existence, and if so, what convinced you?
The creature that I believe is the most likely out of all that we've followed is definitely the mermaid. I'm just kidding. Which you guys just be like, she's batshit crazy. In Indonesia, the orang pendek. There's so many reasons why I believe it's the most likely. It's not because we found the most evidence of it. It's because of the likelihood, the ample food source, the credible sightings. You know, Cornell had a team there for 2 years that set up over 200 trap cameras, and they're wildlife experts that know that there's a certain amount of elephants, a certain amount of black rhinos, a certain amount of tigers there. And on these trap cameras, for 2 years, they captured 1 elephant. Right? They know there are hundreds of elephants, and these trap cameras captured 1 elephant. So these places are so remote. And these animals just, they can avoid our smell. You put up a trap camera, it doesn't matter if you're covered in animal feces, you're going to put your smell on it and it's going to linger, and these animals are very savvy. But the orang pendek is one of those ones that actually needs small human, and it's a primate that walks bipedally, sort of like us, but it's much smaller in stance. And I think I think we're very close to finding out that it did exist because of other skeletal remains that we found in New Zealand that are very similar, in New Guinea that are very similar, that show that dwarfism was, you know, something that was possible, bipedalism in these orang appendix, kind of, you know, the way that they walked and the way that they moved. We have now evidence that that was possible in, you know, our skeletal records. So that for me is one that I believe, and the Loch Ness. Thank you. Did everyone get sick on the buffet? Was that it? Is there something I should avoid at the buffet? Is that why everyone's so quiet?
So ladies, what do you have up your sleeves for the next few months? Do you have any experiences or investigations that you're looking forward to?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any investigations I have coming up, even though it's weird because October is coming, which I hate to say, because summer has flown by. But, you know, just keep on doing the radio show, and I'm working on my Paranormal Girl line. It was on hold for a while, and so nothing too exciting. I wish I had some investigations. I know a lot of you guys that have been talking to me today have some coming up, and heck, if I lived here, I'd be joining you. Yeah, unfortunately, nothing really. I'm kind of boring right now. That's no fun. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I might need a drink. I'm gonna wallow in my sorrows.
Paranormally speaking, nothing I can talk about.
Ooh, very excited.
We all know that game. Hurry up and wait. Yeah. Same deal. I've been pitching a lot of ideas for shows. I've been getting approached by people for some. But I will say there's so many shows getting thrown out there now that are so crazy and off the wall that I think a lot of us have been like, thank you for thinking about me, but no.
Playboy Bunnies, Paranormal.
Oh my gosh. I cannot believe when I saw that, I was like, are you kidding me? Oh.
It's just gotten crazy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. I mean, they'll be like, oh, we got this great show. I'm like, okay, great. What's it about? And as soon as they get like a couple sentences in, I'm like, I'm sorry, but no. I'm not doing it. I've already had my fill with the bloodletting on GHI. Outside of that, just a lot of events. I'm actually back in Michigan twice. Once the September 6th, then again in November. So looking forward to just a lot of events coming up, actually. And outside of that, not too much. Just the waiting game.
Yeah, same here. I have some very cool things in the works that I'm hoping to announce very soon. But these networks are very picky and they like to announce things before I can, and it's also a good thing too because they can change their mind at any minute. So hopefully you'll be seeing my mug again soon on TV, but we'll see.
Have you guys ever had an investigation that's really stuck with you as being unfinished that you'd like to go back to?
Start at your end because I gotta think about this one.
It's funny that you say that because I think about that a lot. There's a few that feel unfinished to us, and there's some that I wasn't a part of. So sometimes you can notice I turn into Jael or I turn into another girl on an episode. So I don't get to do those. So I've always wanted to go back to the Island of the Dolls. For me, that felt like that was something that I didn't get to share with, and to me that feels, like something I wanted to share in. But in terms of unfinished, when you're at some of these okay, so for example, the alien mummies is one that feels really unfinished to all of us. When we're in Chile in the mines and Josh and them, found bodies that they couldn't figure out what they were, and they took all these photos. Well, you can't take that back into the States. And the Chilean government kind of took that from us, so that felt very, you know, like a stalemate, because you have these photos, but you had the body, you had this tangible evidence that you really wanted to test and do something with, but they consider it contaminated and you cannot bring it in the States. So, and the Chilean government said they'd get us the results and they never did. So, but it feels like that with a lot of the investigations. It feels like there are a lot of them that you put a pin in and want to go back to. And I think, you know, the shame about Destination Truth is that, you know, Josh and I had a lot of things that we really wanted to do, and like we did with Romania, when we were able to go back, we had a few like that we were thinking about kind of going and returning and kind of taking it to another level. So for me, they almost always feel a little unfinished.
The unfortunate part is that because it's a TV show, you're on a schedule, so a lot of these places you don't get a full experience with. So yeah, you'll feel like you've missed out on quite a bit, or you wish you could have checked into another location or another spot in that place more. But I'd say, as far as one that I felt unfinished, I'd say it was Waverly Hills, because I did the live show there. Live shows are so much fun, but it's so fun and stressful, and everybody has to be in certain places at certain times, and you're focusing on being in the right place at the right time and not like doing something crazy when the camera comes to you. And it's just, and the crew, like, I mean, normally we'd have 17 people, including the hunters. So that would be all of us out on the road. When we did the live shows, when we were at Waverly, I believe we had 150 people. And it doesn't mean 150 people are running around location. Most of the people were outside in trucks and making sure the audio's up and, you know, the feed's coming through and everything else. But it was just so much going on. It was kind of hard to focus on the investigation. And then it was funny because we did have a couple experiences in the body shoot, which we now know is your favorite.
That place.
And as soon as the cameras went down, Dustin and I were on the 5th floor, and stuff started happening. I mean, it was crazy. I remember, and I was new at this time too, so I was wrapping up cords, and we started hearing footsteps. I'm like, Dustin. And he's like, I know, just grab everything at once, because we didn't have a camera guy with us. It was just him and I. So we grabbed everything we had, arms full, go walking down the stairwell to the 2nd floor, where we're set up at the very end of the hall. And we come out the stairwell, start walking down the hallway, and in the room our first room to the left, we heard, you know, 4 or 5 footsteps. Dustin and I start walking a little faster. We pass the next room on the left, more footsteps. We start walking a little faster, and all of a sudden we heard stomping, running, heavy footsteps come up right behind us. And when I turned around, I expected to see Jay or somebody screwing with us, trying to scare the crap out of us. There was no